We've already learned about gross domestic product and the two different calculation methods in the previous videos. Now we'll continue to explore the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP. Suppose that Company A is the only resident producing unit in country X and specializes in making computers. In 2015, Company A made 10 computers. The price of each computer was $1,000. Therefore, Country X's GDP in 2015 would be the total value of these 10 computers, which is $10,000. In 2016, Company A also made 10 computers. However, the price of each computer rose from $1,000 in 2015 to $2,000 in 2016 due to inflation. How would this price increase affect the GDP of Country X? Would the living standards of Country X's residents be affected by the rising prices? If we use the computer price in 2016, which is $2,000, the 2016 GDP of Country X would be $20,000, which is double the 2015 GDP. Such GDP calculated by using the price level of that current year is called nominal GDP. Yet nominal GDP obtained this way could be misleading. You may still remember that GDP is an indicator of the overall economic performance of an economy and the people's living standards within that economy. In 2015 and 2016, 10 computers had been produced in Country X each year. Assuming that there is no change in the quality, there was no change in the total output. Thus, the number of goods residents could enjoy remained the same. We might wrongly assume that the living standards of Country X had been improved substantially in 2016 because the nominal GDP had increased to double compared with the figure of 2015. In fact, it's merely the result of inflation. In order not to be misled by the change in nominal GDP that is simply due to changes of price level, we can instead use real GDP to measure the total output of Country X. Real gross domestic product refers to GDP calculated using specific base year prices. If 2015 had been chosen as the base year, the 2015 GDP would be the price of a computer in 2015 multiplied by the quantity of computers produced in 2015, which equals to $10,000. As we can see, the nominal GDP and real GDP should be the same for the base year. While calculating the real GDP of 2016, we will instead use the price of a computer in 2015 and multiply it with the quantity of computers produced in 2016. Unlike the nominal GDP of 2016, which is $20,000, the real GDP of 2016 is also $10,000, which is identical to the real GDP of 2015. From the value of 2016's real GDP, we can deduce that the total output of Country X in 2016 is the same as the total output in 2015, which is 10 computers. From this example, we can see that the change in real GDP reflects the change in the total output of an economy. An increase in the real GDP of an economy indicates an economic growth of that economy, and vice versa. Now that we've understood the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP, let's analyze the relationship between the two. The difference between nominal GDP and real GDP lies in the price level. If the nominal GDP is greater than the real GDP of the same year, the cause behind it is the difference in the price level of the same goods. That is, the price of the goods at the current year is greater than the price of the same goods at the base year. For simplicity, we could compare the difference between the real GDP and the nominal GDP of the same year to measure the change in price level between the base year and the current year. That is the rationale behind the GDP deflator. GDP deflator equals nominal GDP divided by real GDP times 100. The GDP deflator can help us measure the change in price level. If its value is higher, it means that the price level has risen. Similarly, if its value drops, it means that the price level has decreased. GDP deflator equals nominal GDP divided by real GDP times 100. For the base year, the GDP deflator value should always be 100 as the nominal GDP must be the same as the real GDP by definition. If the nominal GDP is larger than the real GDP, the GDP deflator obtained will be greater than 100. This actually means that the price level has increased. and if the nominal GDP is less than the real GDP, the value of the GDP deflator will be less than 100, which means a drop in the price level. For instance, the GDP of country X and country Y are $10 million and $1 million respectively, yet country X's population is 100,000, while country Y's population is 1,000. Applying the per capita concept, we'd find that country X's GDP per capita is $100, and country Y's GDP per capita is $1,000. Although the output of country X is higher than that of country Y, we can see that country Y's GDP per capita is much higher than country X's GDP per capita. Therefore, we can conclude that the people of country Y enjoy a higher living standard than the people of country X. Let's do a wrap-up of what we've learned. Using the calculations of real GDP, we can factor out the aspect of GDP that was affected by price changes. Therefore, under normal circumstances, real GDP can reflect the national standard of living more than nominal GDP. On the other hand, different countries have different populations, so we need to calculate GDP per capita in order to accurately compare the living standards of various countries. See you in the next chapter!